Hi and welcome to the A March to Wellness College Alumni Panel presented by the Simi Valley Youth Council. My name is Josh Chandran, and I am this year's chair of the Mental Health Committee. For the focus of this panel, we are going to address the prime concern of high schoolers, which is especially about the daunting application process for colleges. Today, we are joined by several Youth Council alumni who are all successful in college and are willing to give insight on how they manage their mental health throughout high school and how they prepare themselves for college. So without further ado, let me introduce our amazing panelists. First, we have Frances Salvanera, who is currently attending UCLA as a neuroscience major. She is a Regents Scholar at UCLA, which is one of the most prestigious scholarships that UCLA offers. And previously, she had served on the Youth Council for 2 terms. Next, we have Om Patel, who also attends UCLA and is majoring in mechanical engineering. Om is involved in Bruin Racing as a junior drivetrain/powertrain lead engineer and does research for a professor in a lab called Smart Energy Research Center at UCLA. This summer, he will be in Michigan working for General Motors as a mechanical manufacturing engineering intern. And previously, Om served on the Youth Council for 3 terms and was secretary for his last term. We also have Vivek Tarapara, who previously attended Santa Susana High School and graduated summa cum laude honors. He now attends Duke University in North Carolina and is double majoring in electrical and computer engineering and computer science. We have Parsa Karmat, who has previously served on the Youth Council for 2 terms. And for his second term, he was vice chair for the Teen Crisis Resource Number Review Committee and also the treasurer for the entire Youth Council. Parsa is now a computer science and engineering major at UC Irvine and is an endowed scholar for the UC Irvine Alumni Association. For his freshman year at Irvine, he participated in the Make UC Hackathon for the University of Cincinnati, and his team was a finalist for the Google Cloud COVID-19 Hackathon Fund. And finally, we have Paige Barella, who was a Youth Council alumni who served on the Youth Council from 2018 to 2020, and for her last term, she was chair of the Youth Council during the pandemic. She attended and graduated Santa Susana High School while displaying her passion for mock trial and leadership. She currently attends UC Berkeley studying political science and media studies, along with a minor in public policy. She competes for the California mock trial team, works as a caseworker and volunteer income tax assistance intern with the Berkeley Student Legal Clinic, and serves as the facility manager for the Gamma Phi Beta sorority at a chapter. That's all our panelists. You can see that they're all very successful and are all very passionate about what they're doing. Without further ado, let's get into our first question. How was the transition from high school to college, especially with COVID-19, and now it's without COVID-19 because we're pretty much out of the social distance era? And how were you able to meet new people in college? And was that process of meeting new people and staying in dorms very daunting or intimidating?
I think everyone can attest for this. I think during our first year during COVID, it was quite difficult to, I guess, get out of your comfort zone and make friends because all the events used to be on Zoom, like let's say club meetings and club socials. So it was kind of hard to, I guess, get that in-person, face-to-face feeling to it. At least for me, it wasn't the hardest when we got in person because everyone was in the same boat. Everyone was in the boat of where everyone came from COVID and they were trying to make friends, and like dorms and stuff were still social just because I think it's like the environment of college is very towards that independency that you're looking for in college. And I think there's no way you can really go in without meeting a random person, saying hi, and making just random friends on your floor. But I think that's my take on it.
For me personally, considering I had to travel across the country to an unfamiliar place, and it's like I'm away from all my family, some of my home friends as well, I did struggle a bit when with the transition because all of a sudden your entire life, like the 18ish years of your life, is just completely different. You're given a lot of independence all of a sudden, and it's just different. But over time, I came to love love the idea of being at Duke and just being here, and I don't regret my choice of coming here. In terms of making friends, it's not difficult. They streamline it really well. Within your first week, usually there's an orientation week. They have a lot of different events to meet people, and all you have to do is just introduce yourself to the person sitting next to you, and suddenly you become friends. At our dining hall, it's a huge thing where there's huge tables of just people, and you can go up, sit at any table within the first few months anyways, and you just introduce yourself, and the entire group of people usually accepts you. And it's just an amazing process. You just meet a lot of people throughout your time on campus, and you just see them over and over again. and that's how you just eventually become friends. So I'd say making friends in college isn't too difficult. It's like something you're stressed about in the beginning, but once you're actually there, it's a really social environment. A lot of people are in the same boat as you. So
As someone who wasn't able to dorm at all in their university career, so I was remote my entire first year, and then now I'm on-campus apartments. I didn't really have the opportunity to meet people on my floor like probably Om or Vivek had. Especially during my first year, I met a lot of people through Facebook and Discord. That was the main social transition from getting into college during COVID times, and then now when we're back in person for the most part, clubs have been a main part of my development in transitioning into an in-person atmosphere. So being able to work with people who have similar goals and mindset at that club and being able to bond over common goals and similarities is definitely what I recommend for making friends. Especially like what Vivek said about meeting people at the dining hall is definitely a good opportunity because you meet a lot of people you wouldn't see in your classes or anywhere else.
I think everybody had really good points, especially about clubs and just kind of finding friends in your living situation. I, like Parsa, did not get the opportunity to dorm because Berkeley doesn't guarantee housing for second year students. And it's pretty hard to find housing in Berkeley. I ended up joining a sorority. And so that's, as you probably know, it's like a very social club and organization. But I joined for housing, but ended up like really enjoying it. And I really like the people I live with. So that's kind of how I ended up forming friendships because I cannot do Zoom. I just like do not have a good time like forming personal connections with people over Zoom. And even though I did join like a bunch of different clubs my freshman year, I just couldn't really like have a bond with people. I wasn't very attached to them. So I think like for me, just transitioning into being in person for those organizations just really helped me find my friendships and my niches.
To add on to what everyone else was saying, the transition from high school to college definitely has its highs and lows. Trying to figure out how to deal with imposter syndrome and adjust to a new environment can be scary and difficult, but everyone in college experiences that at some point. So when you do get there, it's important to remember that you're not alone. And like everyone else was saying, when it comes to making friends, a lot of us are in the same boat. And like Vivek was saying, if you say hi to someone in a dining hall, you could still be friends with them 4 years down the line. Like for me, I remember, I think the first person that I said hi to on my floor is still one of my good friends today. So everyone's in the same boat, and that's just important to remember.
Thank you for those insightful responses. Our next question is also for all panelists and is, how do you balance your social and academic pursuits without getting burnt out? And how do you de-stress?
What do you mean de-stress? I'm not familiar with that concept. Just kidding. Yeah, I see a lot of laughs here. We all know what we're talking about. But I like to overload my schedule with a lot of different activities, same as high school. And for me, I think it's really important to do things that you enjoy, especially in college. And I know in high school, you're kind of like trying to find things to build your resume and get into college. But once you're in college, it's kind of like you're just trying to do things to figure out what you like and how you want to grow as a professional and person. So just try to find things that you enjoy. And I think that's going to help with burnout a lot. Just make sure you're doing what you like to be doing. I think life's way too short to be doing something that you don't want to be doing in life. So I would do that first. And then of course you're going to get overwhelmed at certain points, even with that. In that case, just like find the little moments to do something that you really enjoy. I personally like going to the gym a lot, and that's kind of like how I de-stress. And I also like hanging out with friends.
I think I completely agree with Paige. I think in college it's kind of different where the organizations you join. I know in high school we all like to admit that we did clubs that we liked, but I know that we did some of it for college apps. But in college, I feel like it's completely the other way where you're supposed to do, because if you don't do what you enjoy in organizations, you're gonna feel like it's a burden. You're gonna feel like the meetings you go to and all the workshop days and everything is gonna be like a burden on you, and it's just gonna add on to your school stress. But instead, I think, like Paige said, I think if you do stuff that you really want to go to, it's going to be like, oh, I can take a break from studying and go work on this project or go hang out with friends. Because those clubs are actually really big avenues for friends as well. That's where you really make because you spend a lot of time like outside of school time. Majority of that time, like social time, is taken up by clubs. So I feel like you can make a lot of friends that you enjoy like spending your time with instead of just like taking clubs for oh, it'll help me get a job. I think it truly is like the environment. I think it's a different environment with organizations where you kind of have to take the approach where it's going to be a break from your studying. It's going to be something you truly enjoy in your practical applications of your major and stuff like that.
I can sort of add on to that. I think I definitely agree with being able to join organizations that you enjoy. Also, taking classes that you enjoy will help decrease burnout. As for staying organized, I think something that has really helped me was having like some sort of calendar. Google Calendar works great to like organize your schedule and make sure you're prioritizing tasks that are coming up so that you're not doing things last minute. Because the last thing you want to be doing in college is finish studying for a quiz that you didn't realize was the next day and not being able to be prepared for that. Just being able to be organized. And if you see that you're being burned out at all, you can always add or drop things from your schedule to help mitigate any stressful effects that are happening in your life. As for how to de-stress, I think usually hanging out with friends is definitely a good way. Even if you think you don't have the time, just you can go say, oh, do you want to grab lunch or dinner or something? You all need to have dinner or lunch anyway. So might as well use that to talk to someone throughout your day. It's definitely a good opportunity.
Something I found really helpful to balance your social life and academic goals without burning out is to have a good support system that'll almost keep you in check before you burn out. For example, like my roommates have had to remind me multiple times to take a break if I'm getting overwhelmed or stressed out. And that's really helpful because personally, I don't always realize like when I'm on the verge of burning out and I'm about to like have a breakdown. So it's nice to have people around me who can help me balance my social life and academic goals and sort of see like when I need to take that break if I'm not doing that and like taking care of myself that way. And as for de-stressing, personally, my go-to is staying in and watching Netflix. College life can be really fast-paced, so chill nights are definitely nice whenever I need to de-stress.
When it comes to balancing social and academic pursuits, I think everyone has like a sort of different way for finding their work-life balance. When you first go to college, it's really difficult to determine your work-life balance, but over time you start to get a feel for like what works for you, and what doesn't. Personally, for me, I really can't get much work done in my room. It's usually just like a hangout spot for my friends or just sleeping. So I dedicate certain study spaces, like work times. Like whenever I go to that study space, my brain is like, okay, it's time for me to work. And then I also set aside a lot of time, like certain times during the day where I just prioritize myself and try my best. And then like I do my best to stick to a mental schedule that I create for myself, like regarding all the things I have to do every day. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm like still working on figuring out that work-life balance because it's like a constant thing. It's like as more things get added to your schedule, you have to figure out times to prioritize yourself, and it's a constantly changing thing. But eventually you do find it.
Awesome. I love those answers. All right. How did you guys deal with failure during high school? And how did you separate your self-worth from your academic pursuits?
At least for me, it's realizing that just because something bad happened doesn't mean that it's going to keep happening. As long as you persevere past the obstacles you face, you don't need to worry about any, I guess, negative consequences from that. As long as you make the best of the situation, you can keep going for your goals, reaching different opportunities. There's no end or be all obstacle that'll like completely destroy anything that happened in high school. I know we were all stressed in high school, but I'm sure many of us can say that those stresses weren't the end or be all for our pursuits, whether it be educational, social, whatever. So just make sure you keep your head high and keep pushing through.
I always see failure as kind of like a motivator in terms of like, I fail, I learn something new, I do it better the next time. And so that's kind of what keeps me going is like, I just want to try it again. Like if, of course, it comes back to mock trial. If I like don't score super high or I get a judge that like really beats down on me, I always like look at the comments and then I think to myself like, okay, I thought I did really good. Maybe I didn't do as good as I thought I did. What can I do better next time so that I could score higher and then get better because of my failure? And so that's kind of how I keep that going. And then for separating like self-worth from your academic achievements, I always think that like the value of yourself comes from your character as a person rather than your achievements. So for me, I think that's really important to keep in mind is that like, am I a good person? Am I helping the people around me? Am I contributing to a good family life, contributing to my friend groups? And that's how I separate academic accomplishments from my personal self-worth.
I think just something small you can do even throughout your life at college is just like take a step back sometimes. Like let's say you just got out of an exam, just like take a step back and just tell yourself that at the end of this day or at the end of that year or even that decade, that test isn't going to mean anything to you. Like it's not going to stop you from getting a job. It's not going to stop you from making friends. It's not going to stop you from looking good on an interview. It's just one really small page in your book. And I think that's really important for you to just like self realize that at the end of like even every day, if you like at night right before you go to sleep, just tell yourself that you can take a step back and just realize that in the grand scheme of everything, it's not going to affect you. And I know in the moment it can be hard a lot of the times, but I think it's just important to realize that you are who you are, and that's not going to change a lot, but you can change what you do in your mindset through life. So
Yeah, I completely agree with Om. Actually, throughout high school, I felt like I did really good for myself. And right when I came to Duke, in one of the courses in my math course, it was linear algebra, which we all know and love as engineers. On my first midterm, I'd say I did probably one of the worst, like I had one of the worst scores in my class. And it was my first time truly dealing with failure. And did I put myself down a bit? I felt like I did. But in the end of the day, in the grand scheme of things, that one exam is not going to be the end or be all of me becoming a future engineer. I can get through it. I can work. Like I just had to change my study habits, think about different ways, just de-stress a little bit, rethink how I'm going to retake that exam. And now I'm doing all right. And I don't think about that exam. I don't put myself down. Um, Now, I don't like think about that exam as a reflection of who I am as a student. I think of it as a learning experience, as Mr. Reinstein, our calculus teacher, has once said. Any failure that we go through is not truly a failure. It's something you learn from and grow from as a student, and that's what being a college student means. You're gonna go through a lot of times where you're stressed and you're dealing with failure, but it's getting past that and growing from it that truly makes you who you are.
I completely agree with everything that everyone else has said. Sometimes you have to fail to learn, and that's hard to realize in the moment when you fail, or even when you just don't do as well as you thought you did, because grades aren't always going to show how much work you put into something. And again, that's hard to see in the moment, but at the end of the day, that one test or those few exams aren't going to define who you are, and that shouldn't determine your self worth either. So just remembering that is really important because you're going to fail in life, but it's how you respond to that failure that's going to help you grow in the future.
So this is directed to all our panelists. How did you get involved in college, like joining clubs, different organizations, and what specific extracurricular activities did you take, and how much time did you put into it, especially with your busy college schedules?
I think the main extracurricular that I took on my first year was Bruin Racing. So it's a FSA racing team at UCLA. We basically build mini F1 cars and go to competition. So obviously the main reason why I joined was because I'm into cars. So that was the first thing that I looked at on the club. Like when you go into orientation, you have this whole open club night where all the clubs are, and you go and you see what each one's about. I think that's the biggest thing that you do to join. And some other ways you can get involved in clubs are like in classes actually. So if you're taking like an engineering class or some class, they have like posters outside if you want to look in the hallways, or the professor sometimes has clubs they're running, so they sometimes tell you about clubs. Um, I think the biggest thing is just to go to that, even look on your university's website for a list of clubs, and just reach out, whether they have an Instagram or email, if you're interested. That's how I did it because I kind of knew what clubs I wanted to get into going in. But I think if you don't really know, I think the best way is maybe talk to some alumni too. Maybe on LinkedIn if you want to look up people that are in your major that went to your school. Reach out to them and say like, what kind of clubs and organizations were you part of, and did they teach you something? I guess because I guess all organizations you take something away from it at the end of the day, so that's important.
Here at Duke specifically, I mean, even any college, I feel like it's pretty easy to get involved in clubs and organizations. A lot of them don't require any prior experience for joining, although some do have like a short application process, which isn't too bad. Personally, I'm not in any clubs right now, but I do plan on joining a Duke. I do plan on joining a club called Duke Rhythm, which is Duke's premier Bollywood fusion dance team next year, and that's because earlier this year I didn't realize that I actually enjoy like choreographed dancing. That was like something I never tried in my life. It was after tryouts finished, I realized that, oh my gosh, I should probably try this out. And I like talked with them, and I'm going to be joining that club next year. But right now, I am doing something outside that's not club related, but it's more like an organization. So through one of my classes, it's called EGR 101. It's like Intro to Engineering. You get set up with a group of students to work on a real life project. And so I'm part of Pratt School's still engineering delivery team, which is a team of 5 students, including myself, that works for a construction company called Skanska. And in short, what we are doing is we're creating a web-based scheduling management system as well as a text-based a text bot. And this is to streamline construction site deliveries. And because that started within my first semester and we had to start from scratch and learn everything from scratch, that took a lot of my time. And that's why I wasn't able to join as many clubs as I wanted to. And I'm still working on that application now. And we're actually going to implement it into one of their construction sites in the next coming few months. So it's a huge project that I really enjoy doing. And although I'm not part of any clubs, I'm still part of a few organizations. So it still works out.
Clubs at Berkeley are very difficult to get into. It's kind of like the opposite. I know that there are a wider range of clubs to join, but they all have an application process. I came in knowing that I wanted to do mock trial. Luckily, I had a pretty vast mock trial resume. So I auditioned for that and still was very competitive process. Like over 100 people auditioned and only 12 got in my year. And the same thing happened with the legal clinic, which I'm now involved in as a volunteer income tax assistant intern and a caseworker. Same thing, about 100 people applied to be in the legal clinic and they only accepted about 10. So it's very similar in that case. The content of both of those organizations is extremely different. So I would be ready to face rejection if you go to a school like Berkeley that's so big that we just have a lot of competition for these different organizations, especially if you're into business. Consulting clubs could be really cutthroat. But I think that if you're really passionate about the clubs that you're trying to join, you have a reason for joining those clubs. I don't think it should be too much of an issue, because I know with both of those, I knew that I was passionate about those issues already. I knew exactly why I wanted to be there. And through those interview processes, I was able to convey that and get involved in the organization. But most people are super chill. I would say that interviews for clubs are more of a vibe check than anything, just to make sure that you fit the culture of the organization.
I can go next. So I didn't exactly know what clubs I wanted to get into in college. So my freshman year, I joined a fair amount of clubs and then went to all the meetings, so went to different events and workshops they held. And I guess the main club I've really become part of is called Hack at UCI. Essentially, we hold hackathons every quarter. They're basically, for people who don't know, they're essentially like science projects for programming where teams go build some sort of project in a set amount of time, and then at the end, show it off to judges and they can win prizes and awards at the end. For that, I saw the club, it seemed really interesting. So I interviewed to be an intern for the club and I got in, surprisingly. So it's been really interesting to see how different clubs work. A lot of them have, some of them have application and interview process, like Paige said, but also a lot of them you can just join openly. For this one, I did have to apply and interview a little bit, but they're pretty much just a vibe check. But essentially, it was a pretty good community of people you get to work with. And since then, I helped host, I think at this point, 4 or 5 hackathons since joining. So it's been a really good experience. And I'd say just don't be afraid to reach out and try out different things. There are a lot of options, and just because of one thing may not be interesting doesn't mean that you cannot try out different things and drop different clubs. Just be open to trying out new things. You might see something really interesting that you never thought you'd want to try before. So just go for it.
So like Om was saying, at UCLA during orientation, there's like a night that's dedicated to finding clubs and organizations that you might be interested in. So I'd say that makes it really easy to sort of like be introduced to clubs or organizations that you might want to join. But also, like Parsa was saying, trial and error can be really helpful when you're trying to figure out what you want to be involved in. Because last quarter I joined a lot of clubs, but right now I'm not even like, I didn't stick with all of those clubs just because you join a lot when you first go, when you first start, or at least in my experience, I did. But like Parsa was saying, they're not all going to be for you, and that's okay. Like, that's just part of finding what you want to be involved in and what you enjoy. The main extracurricular I'm involved in is the Regent Scholar Society at UCLA. So that one's a pretty small organization. It's made up of about like 50 freshmen who receive the Regent Scholarship. So it was really nice to have like a small community already going into college. And the main point I'm trying to get across is that in the spring or summer before you start college, you're probably going to have orientation or start getting emails from organizations that you might want to join. So just don't be afraid to join those clubs and try to get involved in them, and just don't be scared to try something new.
I just wanted to add some last comment. I think one important thing is to not only just do what your major aligns with, like try to join clubs that are, like Vivek said, like he never knew that he had a passion for choreographed dance. But I feel like if you got out there and you start looking at different clubs that are on campus, you might not realize what you're into, and it could be the new like passion throughout college. So just try new clubs, and they don't have to be technically oriented. They don't have to be your major. They don't have to be for your resume. You can just join them to, have fun, play sports. Maybe there's sports clubs out there. Just like do it, like try new things your first quarter, and then you can start like filtering the ones that you definitely think that you're not into out later. Just have an open mind. I feel like that's the biggest thing going into college. Don't be like super tunnel visioned into your major and think about like career and jobs your first quarter. I think it's really important to look at like things that make you happy.
What would your advice be for someone who is in the college application process and is thinking about college?
So I think for someone who is thinking about college and is in high school right now, I would say the biggest thing is use your time in high school to explore different interests. Honestly, colleges, that's exactly what colleges want you to do. They want you to explore your interests and find what you really like to do. And high school is kind of like an initial time to do that. In high school, I took classes and courses that interested me. I was in clubs that actually interested me as well. In my interview they like asked like how I explored high school. And even though I was applying as an engineer, a huge part of that interview ended up being like me talking about my interest in photography, which came because I took AP photo as a result of having shaky hands. In high school, I had shaky hands, and so I ended up taking AP photo to see if I can like improve my picture taking skills. And eventually I did, and I really enjoyed that class a lot. And that was a huge point in my interview for getting into Duke. And I think they really enjoy students who try to explore. And a huge thing at Duke is that they give you 2 years to explore to find what major really suits you best. So as someone who's thinking about going to college, definitely explore. If you're in the application process itself, I would say a huge thing that they care about is in your essays, do your best to show pieces of you that aren't just shown in the rest of your application. You could talk about your extracurriculars and things like that, but they already see that when you list them. Talk about pieces of you they don't see normally. Talk about things that show your character. That's something that they want to see in their college students. They want to see character traits that they really want in their students. So focus on that if you're doing your college application essays right now. Although I think the application process is done for this year, but
I think this is very like I want to say that kind of repeat what I said for the last question is and like what Vivek said, I just want to emphasize is that when you're filling out your college app, they already have your extracurriculars and a list of your activities, a list of your awards and all that. So you don't want to keep like piling on top of it when you're writing your essays. Don't just like write your essay about the extracurricular and then like kind of like topple it over, because at that point you're just kind of like catching on to one thing that you did and you think is good and just writing all about it. But I think what they want is like a diversified, a person with a like diverse experience. They want people that have like all kind of different like handles on life. Like they want to know how your family life is. They want to know the deepest, like not deepest, but they want to know like further than your academic, like surface level, like technical talk. Like even during interviews, when you do clubs or when you do like internships later on, you want to focus on things that aren't academically. You don't want to just focus on your technical experience, like Vivek said. And I think you guys are all one step ahead because you're in an organization like youth council. So you can talk about how youth council is something that you do outside of your academic life that like shows what you're passionate about, and that it's something that you do because you want to do it, not just because you want to get into college. I think that's the biggest thing. You want to show them that you're not just doing everything in your life for college.
I think Vivek and Ohm both said great points. Definitely exploring, try to diversify what you do in high school. Try something else. I'd say try self-reflect on yourself, see what your strengths are, your weaknesses are, and how you, throughout your 4 years in high school, how you've addressed your weaknesses and try to improve yourself, and how you can continue to improve yourself. Just like being able to reflect on yourself and see who you are is definitely something that'll help you improve your college application and like how you portray yourself in your essays, because that's essentially who they want to accept into your college. They want to accept you, not some number that they see on your application. So being able to talk about yourself is definitely an important skill to have.
To add on to what they were saying, essays can be really important in showing colleges who you are outside of your academic performance. So don't be afraid to be vulnerable in your essay if that shows other people what you've been through and how you've used those experiences to move past any like failures or obstacles in your life. And then also, like Vivek was saying, don't be afraid to use high school to explore things and find things that you're interested in, because that can also help you figure out what you want to further explore in college.
Yeah, I think everyone kind of hit it on the nail. I think that when you're applying to college, something important to keep in mind is that everything kind of falls into place for you in the future, because a lot of the times the colleges will accept you based off of what you put in your application. And as long as you're truthful in that, it will help you find like where you fit into the piece of the puzzle, if that makes sense. Because I know, like, for me, when I got into Berkeley and I went to the first Cal Day event and everything, they were talking about how, oh, like Cal is the place like where you can explore yourself, and we like people who can do all these different things and have all these diverse interests. And I was like, wow, that sounds exactly like me. Like, I love to do all these different kinds of things. I like to try new things. So it makes sense that I got into this school. And I think that really speaks to a lot of people's situations, in the sense that like they get accepted to the schools where they fit in. And so even if you currently think that like, oh, this is my dream school, like if I don't get into this school, like it's the end of the world, it's not. Even if you go to Moore Park, like you got another shot at it. So just like don't freak out, don't panic. It's not the end of the world. It's not going to change your life or anything like that. You will find your niche.
I think just to add on to her, I truly believe that no matter where you go, it's your chance to make a name wherever you go. No matter where you go, you're going to be able to make a name for yourself. And even if you don't, you have a whole life ahead of yourself to do that. So I don't think you're in any rush to do so. I think in high school, there's a lot of pressure senior year to like make sure you're doing your best and make sure you know exactly what you're doing. But I think it's important to know that it's fine if you don't know what you're going to do senior year of college, even. I think it's wherever you go, you're going to find a way to fit in. And I think it's important, especially when these like college acceptances are coming in, that it doesn't define you. And I think like no matter where you go, like I said, you're going to be able to explore new avenues wherever you go, because all colleges are in California are very like diverse and I guess offer a lot of things. And I think Vivek can attest to out-of-state colleges and how they have a very similar experience and approach to it. So I think wherever you go, you're going to do great.
Yeah, thank you all for those answers. I really love the last part when you guys like talked a lot about college like really isn't the end of the road for your life, but since you are a senior in high school, that's like the main thing that you are concentrated about. So having that security that college isn't everything, and wherever you go to college will ultimately be the best thing for you. Like you don't have to worry about, oh, am I going to go to this college or that college? And if you're faced with a bunch of rejections, also you must know like, you know, the rejections are actually in a way they kind of guide you through like the most open door that you should be able to take. So yeah, I kind of like that you guys gave that comfort that college is definitely the place to explore, but you also shouldn't be too pressured into getting into one specific college because a lot of colleges can offer what your desired interests are. So thank you for that. For our next question, this is kind of like overlapped with a lot of our previous questions, but what is like your ultimate favorite aspect of your college? Is it the independence you've gained compared to from your high school, like compared to your high school career? Is it the clubs that you join or the people that you meet? Basically, what drives you to like attack like every day with confidence in your college?
For me, I think it's the people. I really just like Berkeley's atmosphere. I think that in a way it's kind of humbling. There's just so many people around you who are just so good at what they do. Other side, it's like we're already surrounded by so many brilliant minds that it's kind of like we're insignificant in that way. So it's a little bit humbling, but at the same time, it's like, wow, I'm at Berkeley and it's this #1 public institution, not UCLA. And and it's just like it's a great opportunity. Every day I walk on a campus and I'm like, wow, I go to this beautiful school with all these amazing opportunities. I'm so lucky to be here. It's such a privilege. So I think that's kind of what keeps me going. But it's also just like you turn around the corner in Berkeley and you see all these homeless people. And it's like, man, I really am lucky. And it's like as a political science and public policy student, it's just kind of like, this is what I'm working towards helping. And I think that the community of Berkeley itself, not just the school, is just so colorful and diverse. And it's just something that I want to help contribute towards. And so I think it just helps me keep in mind why I'm studying what I do.
For me, I think it's really the uncertainty of like tomorrow. Like, what are you going to do when you wake up tomorrow? Like, you have class, obviously, but outside of class, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to go get lunch with a friend? Are you going to go, at least for UCLA, are you going to go into Westwood and have dinner and go have fun? Or are you going to go do laundry? Are you going to go, work out? It's just, I think it's the aspect of college where you don't have a set routine. Like at home where, I went to school, came back from school, ate, did homework, slept, repeat. I think in college it's very much independent, but also it's just fun because you don't sometimes life gets boring when you have like a set schedule for so many years. But when you get to college you have to revamp that schedule to fit your needs and make sure that you come first no matter what. Like you are priority. So if what makes you happy is waking up at 7 a.m. going to the gym, then you do it. Like no one's stopping you from it. I think it's really just that you can do what you want, and no one's there to tell you that you can't. And I don't mean that in any like snarky way, like, oh, you're not at home, so you can do anything you want. It's you have the freedom to do things that you didn't really have, even the good things.
I guess for me, it's sort of very aligned with what Kate said about being meeting people at the college, like the people you're with, just the community you're around at. Like, for me, it's Irvine. It's everyone is there to support you, like even your fellow peers in your classes. If you need help with anything, if you have any questions, you can literally ask anyone in the class and they'll always be willing to either like help you figure out something or help you find someone who knows the answer to your question. So being able to like support each other and having a community of people where you do have support is really great. And also, I guess, sort of along what Om said, like an uncertainty of being able to try out new things that you've never done before in high school and just like going to a new place, trying out new things and just experiencing life in a new area that you've never seen before, trying to explore, I guess, the surrounding area, going on hikes, going on explorations to the beach, just anything new that you've never had the opportunity to do before. It's really interesting and I guess a humbling experience to see, wow, this is somewhere I've never been before. I can try out anything I want here now that I never got to do.
I agree with like aspects of what everyone said. What Paige said about going to her school and walking around and being humbled by just being there. I feel the same way when I'm here at Duke. Literally, I walk outside and I see a Gothic building and I'm like, dang, I'm pretty much in Hogwarts. Holy what? But also just being surrounded by like-minded individuals who are motivated to do to do good in the world. To see that there are such smart people that are always willing to help you when you're struggling. Having that support system that Parsa said is just so beneficial. Everyone's here, everyone's struggling through the same thing, everyone's struggling through their work, but we're all here in it together, and that's a huge thing in college that isn't usually stated, but it's an amazing support to have. But also being able to choose your experience, being able to choose what you want to do and what you want to do every day. You can change it up. You can go to the gym one day, or you can go to like some karaoke night another day. It's like you choose what you want to do. And your college experience is what you make of it. And that's the reason why college is so great, in my opinion.
I agree with everyone else. UCLA and pretty much every college has such a diverse group of people that motivate you to not only work hard but also have fun. So I love the community that I'm surrounded by because a lot of us just want to support each other and help each other reach their goals in a new environment where, like everyone else was saying, you have so much freedom to do whatever you want, which isn't something that you're used to in high school. So it can be really fun to explore those new opportunities in college.
Well, thank you for that answer. So we have a really interesting question. If you could go back in time and tell your yeah, March Madness, and go back in time and give your freshman self some advice, what would you say? What would you tell them maybe to help them decide what to do in college?
My freshman year, I did absolutely nothing. I was in choir and I was in CSF, and that was it. But like no clubs otherwise. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then I don't know if you guys know Anil Chiganti, but he was like telling me about all the stuff that he was doing to try to get into college, and I was like, whoa, my mind's blown. Maybe I should be doing this too. And so the next year I joined mock trial, and that was but that's like Paige's mindset going into sophomore year. If I was to tell little Paige something in freshman year, I'd probably tell her to get a social life. I did nothing. Like I said, I did absolutely nothing. And I think that the pandemic is kind of what told me, like, you should probably invest in your personal relationships a little bit more. And I finally learned that then. But I think in high school, like, I just needed some time to be a high schooler. And by the time I was a senior, the pandemic hit, I just felt like I hadn't had much of a high school experience because I was always working from sophomore year on. And so I think I just needed to have some more time to be a kid.
I think I can just agree with what Paige said. I think once you go to college, I think one thing that I would tell high school would be to enjoy life at home while you can, because once you leave, like when you're in high school, you always feel like you want to grow up and be older and do bigger and better things. But you realize very, very quickly that it's not just the ask and it comes and you're given like that. It's kind of like there's so many milestones on the way that you kind of lose sight of the small things and you kind of glance over them. But I think it's really important to slow down. College is very fast paced, as Francis said earlier. I think it's important for you to slow down and enjoy spring break. I think was probably one of the greatest weeks of my life, coming home and just like relaxing and not doing homework and not studying for a test. You kind of need to appreciate the smaller things and notice that, wow, you're doing a lot. You deserve a break. You deserve to go home and have that set routine again. Like sometimes it gets exhausting with all that uncertainty, but I think what I'm trying to say is that you just need to just like slow down and appreciate the small things in life, whether that be like Vivek and Paige were saying, like your campus, or that whether that be going home and enjoying life, like a routine, like going home, seeing your parents, seeing your siblings. I think it's just important to slow down and see those things.
If there's one thing I would tell my high school self, I would say enjoy it while you can, because things change. You're becoming an adult, you move on to college. It's a completely different environment, a completely different atmosphere. You're given a lot of independence, and that consistency is something that you usually don't find all the time in college. Really just enjoy high school, explore, have fun, because that is the last years of your like childhood, not childhood, your last teenage years, So just enjoy it.
Yeah, I guess I really have to go along with what Om and Vivek were saying. So this one office quote comes to mind where I wish there was a way you knew you were in the good old days before you actually left them. Because while everything in high school may not be as great as you might have imagined, you're still surrounded by some great people and some great opportunities. So like realizing that you do have those here, and after you leave, you will, in retrospect, see that, oh, I might have missed them and I didn't appreciate them as much as I should have. So like being able to realize that you do have great things here, and really moving forward, always realize like you can look into the future, but also recognize that the present is great too. So don't forget to appreciate that while you're in it.
Looking back, I put a lot of pressure on myself that didn't do anything but stress me out. So if I could go back in time, I probably wouldn't be as hard on myself. And if I could tell myself one thing, it'd be that everyone's in a different place in life. So as long as you're doing the best you can, that's all that really matters. So just don't forget to slow down and be a kid and have fun.
Awesome. So how did you guys determine what you wanted to study in college?
I think this one's a handful. I think for some people it's very clear going in from high school what they want to do, whether that be engineering or at least like general fields like engineering or health or pre-med or whatever, law. But I think it's important to go in with an open mindset. Like if you go in as an engineer and then you take a class and you're saying, I don't want to do this for the rest of your life, I think it's okay to like accept that and not do engineering. Like do not pressure yourself into doing what your high school self thought you would like. I think like this whole webinar we've been talking about how colleges and what colleges, and I think we've all touched on the aspect of like exploring. Just make sure that you're not putting pressure on yourself to stay in the same major. Like make sure you're willing to change if need be. That's saying don't go in with like, the mindset of like, oh, I'm gonna change next year. I think it's just like the open mindset. Like make sure you do what you like. And I think I've known a lot of people that are in, this is not what I want to be doing for the rest of my life, which is completely fine. I think it's something that's overseen. Like people are like, oh, I want to be this and this. But I think you don't really truly understand what you want to do until you see like the technical and practical aspects of it in college. Even the culture, I feel like that's is a big thing with majors. Like if you don't like the culture of your like major or your careers, I think it's important for you to just put more thought to it.
For me, actually, when I first started in high school, freshman year, I actually wanted to go into pre-med initially. So after joining many clubs in high school, like robotics and taking classes, like I tried to diversify in classes, like taking AP photo, like Vivek said before, or like computer science classes. Before that, I wanted to like apply as a chemical engineering major, but then like 3 months before I actually submitted the application, I changed to computer science just out of a whim because I felt like that's actually what I was more so passionate about. And the experience I've had trying out different things in high school led me to that. And moving on to college, like said, like making sure that it was actually a good fit for you, taking the classes and like trying out different projects outside of the classroom, it really helped me see that I was actually passionate about this and this is something I would be interested in doing as a career even post graduation. So I guess it's like in general, become with an open mind in high school, try out different classes, different opportunities inside and outside the classroom. And even in college, like said, don't be afraid to switch out if you see that this may not be for you. And if it is for you, great. Keep trying to pursue it, see and keep trying to figure out what you're interested in.
I definitely agree with what Parsa and Om said. As someone who's planning on switching their major, I applied as a mechanical engineering major to Duke. In high school, I thought I was going to do biomedical engineering, but I ended up applying as a mechanical engineering major. Now I'm an electrical engineering and CS major, which is completely different from mechanical engineering. But it was through taking different courses at Duke that showed me like, oh, I actually like electrical, like the electrical side of things rather than the mechanical side. And even now, I'm still exploring. I'm not fully set on what type of electrical engineering aspect I'm going to be doing. I'm going to start exploring machine learning this summer, just because that I have no knowledge of machine learning whatsoever. But I want to see if that's something for me. So I'm going to be doing that through the CERN lab in Geneva, Switzerland. But that's something I never even thought of before even coming to Duke. It's through exploring, even once you get into college, where you figure out what you want to do and what you might want to do. Throughout your life, you will still constantly explore, and think that's just a big part of how like determining your major. It's just as you explore, you figure out what you like and what you don't like, and then you keep following the path of what you want to do.
For me, I went in political science, same as I am now, but I knew that I wanted to explore a little bit more, which is kind of why I liked Berkeley in the first place, was because they don't technically admit you into a major to begin with. Like you're pre-political science when you're admitted. Then you have to do your prereqs and then you declare. And so while I was doing my prereqs for political science, I was also dipping my toes into business and political economy so I could see what those were like. I do not like math. I do not like econ. I did not choose those majors. So I ended up just keeping political science because it just fit with what I was going for. I initially chose it because that's like the typical pre-law major because I know that I want to go to law school, and I still do. And so I just stuck with political science. I started looking at the media studies major requirements and started noticing that they're very similar. I knew that I really liked pop culture and movies and television and wanted something a little bit more practical if law school didn't work out. So I added on a double major and it seems to be working pretty smoothly with my schedule. Public policy minor, that just kind of fit into my schedule because I started taking public policy classes just because I was interested in it. And all of a sudden I was 2 classes done out of a 5-class minor. So I just figured, why not keep it going? And so that's how I ended up with my majors and minors.
For me, I was going back and forth between majoring in neuroscience and psychobiology up until the week that college apps were due. But the more I researched it, the more I realized that neuroscience might give me more opportunities in the future if I decided I didn't want to go the traditional pre-med route. But like everyone else was saying, you might not figure out what you want to do until you start taking those classes. And if you decide that you don't like what you're in right now, that's totally okay to switch because it's all about just figuring out what you want to do. And once you find that, just keep on going, like Vivek said.
All right, so thank you all. That was our last question. So thank you all so much, to all of the panelists here, for your insight on your college lives and how you dealt with college pressures and like how high school, the transition from high school to college was in place in your life. So to all the people watching on YouTube, we hope that you enjoyed this session. And if you want to see more from the Simi Valley Youth Council, make sure to follow us at Simi Valley Youth Council on all socials. Once again, I thank all the panelists for being here.
Thank you for having us.